Welcome to Bill and Tony's Excellent Adventure in Music. Here are your hosts, Bill Fraser and Tony Sartu.
Welcome to Bill and Tony's Excellent Adventure in Music. I'm Bill.
And I'm Tony.
But today, instead of talking about music, we're going to talk about movies about music.
Yeah, so we're here to talk about the film Becoming Led Zeppelin, the Led Zeppelin documentary that came out on February 7th of 2025. This was kind of interesting because it was a 1 week IMAX only release for its first week out in the world on 369 screens. The following week, it was moved off of IMAX completely for Captain America and onto 1,039 standard screens worldwide. And what's pretty cool about this is that the IMAX premiere, it set a record for an IMAX exclusive release with $3 million of box office that first week. And by the end of its second week, it will have grossed over $7 million worldwide. The movie was directed by Bernard McMahon and written by McMahon and Alison McGordy. And obviously it stars Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, John Bonham, and Robert Plant. So Bill, we've done a pod on Led Zeppelin. So, really quick, what's your history of Led Zeppelin and your history with Led Zeppelin and their music?
So I'm a fan. I've enjoyed Led Zeppelin's music for a while. I became a big fan when I started listening to the Rolling Stone Top 500 a few years ago and just really immersed myself in their catalog. And I love blues rock, so they're right in my wheelhouse of the type of stuff that I enjoy. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, for me, as we discussed, not my thing, was never a fan, have grown to appreciate them a little bit more. It's still not, what I gravitate towards. But, we'll talk about it a little bit more. But this movie really made me change the way I thought about them a little bit. And I guess we can get to that. So while we're at it then, so what did you think, what did you think of the movie? Did you like it?
I loved the movie. I didn't have a whole lot of expectations going into it. And I have seen obviously other music documentaries. I've never seen anything documentary wise quite like this. I think the main one we saw in IMAX was the Bowie documentary. That was the first music documentary I'd seen in IMAX. That was my frame of reference. And this was a different angle. The Bowie documentary was very much knitting the music together, and this was knitting the story together. And I loved it. I loved the way that it was laid out. The whole interview based approach with the primaries, the fact that they were able to find a previously never heard Bonham interview that they were able to weave in really, really well. And they had the reactions from Plant and John Paul Jones and Jimmy Page on, hearing Bonham's thoughts. It was touching. It really was. And just
Oh,
kind of seeing their journey. It was things that I didn't 100% know. I mean, we did research when we did the pod previously. I learned so much watching this movie, and I really loved hearing the backstory.
yeah, I think it was actually a total of three different previously released or unheard Bonham interviews that they weaved into the story. And I loved this movie. And despite not being a fan of their music, this is exactly the stuff that interests me. I loved learning the stories about bands or celebrities or whatever before they became big. And that was an intentional choice that McMahon made with this documentary and really sold it to the guys was he stopped at the end of 69, at the end of Led Zeppelin 2. He was not interested in after they became the biggest band in the world and all the the sex and the drugs and all the bad things that happen and all that. He wanted to really talk about how they went from random dudes and then almost overnight became the biggest band in the world. And that's a story that I'll listen to all day.
It was amazing. I knew it was, a Page project to get to the band, but I didn't quite know everybody's individual story the way that they were able to tell
Mm-hmm.
it and knit it together. That, you know, the fact that Plant and Bonham had worked together and knew each other when they were young, like, you know, in their early teens. The fact that, you know, both John Paul Jones and Page were incredibly successful session musicians and whatnot. And then Page was, you know, hugely successful with the Yardbirds. And, you know, going on to wanting to start his own new band and then kind of going and cherry picking people. And he didn't get his first choices. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of worked out, you know, that this band came together because he went to pick Terry Reid and Terry Reid wasn't available. He had just signed a record deal. And Terry Reid's like, you need to go listen to this guy, Robert Plant. You're going to love him. And we talked about it on our pod. It's just so interesting how it came together. And Plant was like destitute. I mean, he was living like
Yeah,
out of like
out of a
homelessness
suitcase.
and out
Yeah,
of a
yeah.
suitcase, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the other guys were not. You know,
Yeah.
Bonham was married, and his wife wanted him to have nothing to do with Plant.
Yep.
You know, John Paul Jones was an incredibly successful session musician. He was on a ton of stuff. And, you know, and that was the other piece, like showing some of the things that they were actually involved in was mind blowing. Like,
Yeah.
holy cow. They, you know, recorded on the Bond theme, like both Page and John Paul Jones were in the Bond theme. I mean, that's nuts.
Guys, not the it was Shirley Bassey and Goldfinger.
Goldfinger, exactly. I'm sorry. Yes.
Bonham and Jones played on that, not played it once. They played
They,
on that
they
song
were
that
on
we've
that
all
track.
heard all our lives. They were on that. It's crazy. Um, my yes, I love all that, and
And the fact that John Paul Jones like was like this incredibly successful, you know, musical person in his own right. I mean, To Sir with Love, which was an incredibly huge movie. He did the musical arrangements for that. Like, it's insane.
mhm. And it's interesting that Page and Jones were in the same space, but we talked about this on the Led Zepp 4 pod, and it was interesting to hear John Paul Jones tell the story in his own words about how his wife is the one that got him to apply for the job of bass player. You know,
And
it's
he called
crazy.
Page. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you're looking for a bass player. You want one?
Yeah, so anyway, I just love this movie. And you know what I was thinking about afterwards and why I like this movie so much, it's the same reason why I haven't remotely been interested in seeing Peter Jackson's Beatles, multi-hour, multi-part story about I don't know what's it about. Is it about Let It Be or uh,
Get Back is about the last album that they
it's called
recorded.
Get
Yeah.
Back, but it's
Yeah.
about the
It's about the last
so
album they recorded. Yeah.
yeah.
So
And zero interest because you know what? I'm not interested in after the Beatles and the dissolution of the band. I'm interested, tell me all the stories about them playing the German bowling alley for a summer. Tell me the stories about, them riding on the school bus together, George and Paul. And those are the stories that I want, and that's what this movie gave. I just loved it.
and it was curated in a way that made this, you know, 2 hour movie experience special, right? You got the story of the making of this band. Becoming Led Zeppelin is exactly what they delivered.
Hmm.
They you know, they delivered an excellent origin story for how they actually became Led Zeppelin. And, you know, versus having to go watch, you know, 9 hours of, you know, documentary footage, they put together a story in a very tight package that covered all of their origins, covered how they
Hmm.
came together, covered a whole lot of interesting facts, did it through interviews, did it through a lot of really good storytelling, like
Yeah.
really powerful storytelling.
You mentioned the surviving band members listening to the audio of John Bonham, and you're right. It was touching, like you said. You could see in their eyes and in their faces how delighted they were to hear their old friend talking again.
The other thing that really moved me was the not without giving away the ending, but the way that Page spoke about things at the end and how he kind of knit together, like, if you believe in something and you know you're meant to do something, like, put your effort towards it. And what you put into it and the effort that you put into it matters. And you can do anything if you really believe in yourself and you put the effort in. And more power to him. He believed in himself, and man, was he a wild success.
Something else that was interesting was like I've always had this disconnect between, Plant's solo work, um, in the 80s and 90s, and then Honey Drippers, and then now his, life as an Americana blues performer. And that disconnect is cleared up. That's who he is. That's what he was into when he was 17. And he's just getting back to his real authentic self. And that was really pretty interesting, you know, because I could never square that rock god persona with who he is, and now we know.
But I mean, a lot of their stuff is very blues infused. I mean, like the Zeppelin
When the levee
discography
breaks.
is so blues infused. So
Yeah.
it's just a different take on it, right? So
Yeah. So was there anything you didn't like?
I probably would have liked a little bit more music worked in. Like it was a little less performance than I thought it was going to be in the IMAX. And I actually probably would have enjoyed a little bit more. There was some, and it was good, and they had some things I'd never seen before, which I thought were really cool.
Hmm.
I actually think if they worked in a little bit more of that, I might have enjoyed it a little bit more.
So, I was thinking that I was going to disagree, not disagree, but just had a opposite reaction, but maybe not. I think what it was for me is, and again, because it's not really the music that I'm drawn to, the music performances that they had were long. Like so it was like whole
The whole performance,
performances
yeah.
of songs that were long. And I think I would have rather had that exact same amount of time, but show me, parts of maybe, twice as many songs instead of, a handful of songs in their entirety. For me, I think I might have liked that better.
Yeah, I probably would have said I liked what they had, and then sprinkle a little bit more in of the clips of other things. You don't have to do as whole songs everywhere. I would have liked a little bit more interspersed in the movie, but the things that they did show were amazing and like full clips of just brilliance. The other thing that I really take away is seeing young Led Zeppelin, which you get to see, and like I think of Led Zeppelin, I think of like the height of their powers, Led Zeppelin.
Hmm.
We got to see in this documentary young Led Zeppelin who were up and coming, and oh my God, were they amazing!
Yeah.
Like just Jimmy Page, I can't say enough about how much of a guitar god he is, and like if there was ever any doubt on how everybody emulated him, oh my God, like watch this documentary and then go watch Eddie Van Halen play and go watch, anybody in the 80s, 90s rock. And it's like, oh my God, just how they dress, how they this, how they that, how, the things he does on the guitar. He's amazing. And Bonham, he's a force of nature. Like his drum work is just unparalleled in the rock world. I mean, he's just an absolute force. So I loved seeing young Led Zeppelin. I also loved seeing them in the shows that they showed where you had some people like falling asleep and like not interested in it. Like it was so fascinating. It was so
So that's
cool.
actually what I wanted to talk about was like, and I haven't gone back and listened to our previous pod, but I feel like I remember talking about how they were actually much bigger in America than they were in England. And this documentary directly shows you that they come out of the gate and nobody's interested in England. They're like you were saying, yawning. People are bored. They come to America and they just blow up. So I don't know what that is and what that speaks to, but it is interesting that these, British boys just, initially England didn't get them.
Well, and it was that San Francisco Fillmore show that they blew up at.
Yeah.
Documentary did a great job of highlighting that was the show. Like that
Hmm.
was the show that everything kind of took off from.
Yeah.
So
All right. So any final thoughts, comments?
If you have the opportunity to go see this on a big screen, I recommend it. IMAX was great. I
Yeah.
I love seeing in the big format, especially the music stuff was great.
The big format is, it's nice to see it bigger, but really the reason I wanted to see it in the IMAX was also for the premium
The
sound.
sound.
Um, and that was the key too. So if it comes back around in IMAX, definitely go check it out. But with or without the IMAX, you should see it. It's really good.
If you've got a good home theater setup, it'd be special too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right. So overall grade.
I'd give it at a lot of John Bonham's drumsticks, like that's yeah, or guitar, whatever, yeah, straps. I don't know.
Yeah, for me, 3 out of 4, be, because it was just really well done. I highly recommend it, and had a really good time watching it.
I'd probably go closer to 3.5 out of 4. Personally, like I love the I love the story. I thought it was great, and to what you said before, I love getting the origin story.
Hmm.
That's fascinating stuff. So, all
Okay, I'll agree to that. 3.5.
right, so we would love to hear from you. We are on every social now, and we're now Bill and Tony Pod on everything. Okay, so on social media, on Instagram, Bill and Tony Pod, on Twitter, Bill and Tony Pod, on Facebook, Bill and Tony Pod. Oh my God, we even have a brand new website. Guess what it is?
Bill and Tony Pod.
www.billandtonypod.com.
What about TikTok?
We even have a TikTok, but there's nothing on it yet.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Yeah. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. Love to hear from you on what you thought about the movie. If you go back and check out our pod on Led Zeppelin 4, love to hear about it as well. And I guess we'll just leave by saying thank you for listening to B&T's Excellent Adventure in Movies. And if you want more Led Zeppelin content from us, do go back and check out our Led Zeppelin 4 pod. We'll have a link to the show in the show notes. And we'll be back with a new B&T Excellent Adventure in Music show next week.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you listening.